This is Deacon Charles, and this will be our third session on the foundation of Orthodox spirituality. And in this video, we're going to cover the topic of watchfulness, or neptic theology, which is the method that St. Gregory, as well as the Church Fathers long before, taught about how to purify the heart so that we could come to know God and have theosis, unity with Him, and be in direct communication through His direct, uncreated energies. Jesus told us that we are to have a pure heart, and in this way we'll be able to see God. But He's given us also a spiritual way of knowing, which is through the heart. The heart, the nous, is the center of our soul and the way that we are connected directly with God. So the question that we must answer is, how do we purify this spiritual instrument that God has created in us? The way is what is called neptic theology. It's also called watchfulness. Now make sure you don't confuse this with mindfulness, which is a Buddhist type teaching. Watchfulness is peculiar to Orthodox teaching. This term neptic derives from the Greek word nepsis, which means watchfulness. As Jesus said, we watch and pray, and then we do not enter into temptation. So to avoid the temptations that lead us astray, He's saying we must watch and pray. They go together. Peter says, be sober and be vigilant, because your adversary, as a roaring lion, walks about seeking whom he may devour. So there are forces that are constantly trying to lead us astray. So we have to be vigilant. We have to be watchful. So it's this inner world that we must watch, and we must try to prohibit the entry of any thought that's going to mislead us and lead us to temptation and then to sin. Here's an ancient saying that goes back that says, like an axe which topples large trees by hitting their roots, when the root is struck, it doesn't spring up again. This is what watchfulness is all about, striking at the root of our temptations. So where do these thoughts come from? They aren't things we naturally want to think about, but they arise in us, and they come from our five senses, the spiritual and the physical. So we must watch our senses, because when they are uncontrolled, they can lead to images and actions and emotions that lead us to sin. And these images then that come from the senses are placed in our imagination, and they become the seeds for pleasure in the heart, causing us to act out of our emotions, our passions, and lead us to sin. So, to purify this heart, we must learn to control these thoughts, and we must strive to be watchful, which is the way we're going to catch them and not allow them to enter into our heart. This is also called guarding the heart. So as soon as a tempting thought comes, we must immediately reject it, knock it down, and not allow it to become more vivid and remain sketched into our memories. So any impure thoughts are going to cloud our heart and prevent us from communicating and knowing God directly. But if we look at specific things like criticizing and judging others, which we know to be not a true Christian approach, if we are watchful, we can overcome this and throw out these thoughts that are about judgment and not criticize others unduly. St. Hesychius identifies 4 kinds of watchfulness. One is observing every mental image or provocation that comes into our mind. And the second is freeing the heart from all thoughts keeping it profoundly silent and still and in praying. So through prayer and this silence that comes in prayer, we can eliminate all thoughts. And third, continually calling upon Jesus Christ for his help through that continual prayer. And fourth, he says, always having the thought of death in one mind. And this reminds us what our purpose is to overcome death through our unity with Jesus Christ. Now, the Church Fathers have told us that the soul has three faculties. These are the intellectual, the desirous, and the sensual. So the passions reside in the desirous and the sensual part, and this is called the passible or emotional part. This is the part that we have to control, and we do this through the intellectual part of the soul. So the thoughts from our senses and fantasy, we must keep from proceeding to this passible part so they don't become self-centered desires and lead to action which we do not really desire. The soul can be quiet when the eye of the soul is free from these desires and passions. And this is the main purpose for this watchfulness. So we quiet the soul so God's energies can be known. We can be in union with him. And it's the core science of what's called neptic theology. For this watchfulness to bear fruit, it must be coupled with prayer, particularly this unceasing prayer of the heart called the Jesus prayer. So we repeat it with sincerity. It's a repentant prayer. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me, a sinner. We say this over and over in prayer, concentrating on the words of this prayer, bringing our soul into silence and listening for God to speak to us. As we repeat this prayer over and over, it becomes something that's in our heart and in our mind, and something that will continually repeat and protect us from these unwanted thoughts. So it assumes also that we have a true faith. This is the foundation, of course, of all Orthodox spirituality, that we are fasting and we're participating in the sacraments of church. But of course, first of all, we must have a firm, unshakable faith. In this chart, we see the basic components of our human nature, as we discussed in earlier videos. The inputs come from our senses, taste, smell, sound, touch, and sight, and then go to our brain. And it's here where our thoughts are formed from these senses. And they can also come from fantasy, which is coming from the intellect, things that are made up based on unknown forces that are also entering. So the key then is, since the brain interpreting these things is going to give out signals to the rest of our body to cause us to act through our emotions or our passions, that the intellect must be trained to resist all of these temptations and to keep the heart pure, to guard it from being clouded by these unwanted temptations of the mind. In this way, with a clean heart, the pure heart, as Jesus says, we will be united to God, and the Holy Spirit will be sent to us through God's grace, and we will then be able to act in harmony with his will. So it'll be his will be done rather than our ego-centered will that leads to our actions. So the true theology of the Orthodox Church is ascetic. And the Church Fathers emphasize these neptic topics for people to purify their heart, and so they can have real communion with God. There's no difference between what are so-called social fathers and the neptic fathers. The social fathers are those that worked in the world, were as parish priests, as bishops, and established hospitals and orphanages and so forth. And the neptic fathers are those that spent their time in seclusion, basically, in monasteries. There's no difference in the kind of spirituality that they teach between us. Now think about the apostles who worked exclusively in the world, but deep inside They were workers of nepsis and prayer. Their work was not any kind of social reform project, but it was about the rebirth of souls through Christ. This is what Jesus came for, to give us a rebirth, to open our hearts and show us the pathway to be united through Him. This is the fundamental way of Orthodox spirituality. Purifying the heart, coming to know God directly, and being in union with Him, carrying out His will. So a watchful, noetic mind is one that is enlightened by the Holy Spirit in the depth of the heart and mind, which allows us to participate in His energies, and this is what we call theosis. And finally, a true Christian is one who achieves watchfulness. And he who is truly watchful is a Christian at heart.